actually come out of this, this bear phase stronger than we went into it. We have a company that has been tested, and people who have been tested, people who have been eliminated, people who have been added, and good and regular communications on the science side and on the management side. So it's a process of maturity to be able to weather a tremendous storm and come out of it stronger than you went into it. And stronger in our industry means examination of the asset, definition of the asset, understanding of the scientific character of the asset, understanding of the economic characteristics, development of required reports, which are filed with the regulators and are strict beyond your wildest belief. There's so many must-haves and double checks and third parties that it turns out to be a document which we have in the form of a pre-feasibility, which is quite unusual, as Uli had mentioned to us, for a company like ourselves, especially where there's over 2,000 failed. And we have a very enthusiastic, if you will, drill program. We have 2 drills on the property now, and there'll be a third very shortly. And the third, if you've seen some of the pictures of the 2 that are on there, you can see something that's extraordinarily tall and very powerful, very new. But the next one's even bigger, because we intend to do things that Uli will tell you about that are also quite uncommon to any other companies in our sector. And it will be recognized. And the recognition will come from the professional side first, and in fact already has. Because of Uli, whose reputation is extraordinarily well known, because of his absolute discipline in how he goes about things, because arguing with Uli is only proves you're dumb, and you know, there'll be none of that. Okay, so you're in excellent hands. I'm going to get out of your way. There's times for people, and there's not times for people. There's times for the scientist and disciplinarian, if I might say, to make the direction of what's going on. And there's times for my skill sets, which has helped us get through a very difficult period, because I refuse to recognize people quit. I don't. I simply don't. I will tell you that Africa ate most of what I had, okay? And I'm very happy. It doesn't bother me in the least. Simplification of life actually makes for becoming content. You know, all kinds of silly things is complexity. This company is a mission where I'm concerned. It has to succeed, and succeed as well or better than you expected. The man that will see to that to the best of his ability is Uli Roth, who has already built 6 mines, 5 of which I believe are still operating. So we are privileged to have the discipline, the direction, the knowledge, and the experience of what is most necessary for the company at this point of our career, and that is what Uli will show you he is doing now. So Uli, if I might give up this microphone and pass it on to you, I would be very pleased to leave.
Just before I begin, I wanted to amplify a comment that Jim made. The mining business is cyclical, we all know that. And every cycle, people that had easy times when times were good ended up disappearing. This last cycle has been a very unusual one. This is my 5th cycle that I've lived through over a career of more than 45 years in mining. This one has been particularly severe in that over 2,300 junior listed companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange are now street names, postcards, or addresses in some lawyer's office. They've disappeared. Tanzanian royalty has survived. Not only that, but during these troubled times, as Jim said, we look to see how can we make a transition and put the company on a better path ahead. So what I'm going to be showing you today is the outline of a program that we hope will achieve this. In saying that, I'll be using concepts and diagrams that normally you don't find in the junior sector. We've decided to take a professional approach that you find more often in larger, better established companies as opposed to in the junior sector. So if there are any concerns that I'm using phrases you might not have heard, just yell at me. It's going to be an informal session, or afterwards I'll try and answer them. So the first slide is, starts out with the title PFS. It stands for Pre-Feasibility Study. For those of you not familiar, all mining companies can only publish technical reports done to an internationally approved standard. Words like resources, reserves, costs, estimates have to be mandated and run through a rigorous 43-101 filter. The reason for this is that the junior sector has historically proven to be a great loss of value for investors. One of the most recent ones was Bre-X, when the geologist in charge happened to fall out of an airplane and the company lost $20 billion that night. So we have now produced, for the first time in the history of Tanzanian royalty, a pre-feasibility study at the highest level of 43-101. All costs in it are estimated to plus or minus 20%, often through independent vendor quotes, as is mandated by 43-101 standard. And this pre-feasibility study, the last step to completion, is called feasibility study. That's the next highest level. And once you have a feasibility study, you are then permitted to begin construction operations and get permits. No lending agency will give you money without a professional feasibility study. No environmental agency will approve permits without a feasibility study. No operating permits will be granted by any local or national authorities without a feasibility study. It becomes your calling card to getting into production. So for the first time in the history of this company, we're one step away from that. And the program that I'm going to lay out for you today is designed to see what is the best option for the company in terms of framing the feasibility study before we start to work on that. And as I hope you'll see, we are in the pleasant position of having more than one option. The pre-feasibility study demonstrates that at the site we have a resource of 1.65 million ounces. That's in three categories: measured, indicated, and inferred. The pre-feasibility study only permits use of measured and indicated. So what that has done is lift it to a standard of higher confidence in order to call it a resource or a reserve. The pre-feasibility study is based on 1.1 million ounces of reserves. To call a resource a reserve, you have to demonstrate that it can be mined at a profit. To do that, you have to estimate your cost at plus or minus 20%, and then generate a revenue stream. And then you have to charge your costs against that and see how much is your net cash flow after taxes. These 1.1 million ounces are contained in 19.2 million tons. The weighted average grade is 1.54 gram per ton. And the current mine life of this open pit is 16 years, during which we will, from the 1.1 million ounces in the ground, produce over 820,000 ounces of hard gold in doré. The economics are robust. At today's gold price, the net present value of this pre-feasibility study, after tax, after capital, after all costs are deducted, after payment of royalties to the government, after Jim's salary, after my free time, and including this meeting, is US $131 million at 5% discount. Constant, not inflated. So we have on our books, for the first time in the history of this company, a strong foundation. We have a profitable pre-feasibility study done to a costing level of 20%. In my personal opinion, that no longer makes us a junior exploration company. And that's the turning point on which we hope to go forward in the future. Shown here is a little arrangement. When you do pre-feasibility studies, you have to show where the chief executive's offices are, where the plant is located, where your tailings are. The airstrip will be, of course, removed. You have to show where your power lines are, where your roads are, where your guardhouses, and all the rest of it, where your warehouse is. The key to the future of this project is this faint outline called the open pit. And here it is. You'll be seeing quite a number of graphics of the open pit. The open pit has got two parts of it, a smaller, rounder, deeper portion, and a longer, shallower portion. Shown within that, in gold, are the mineralized zones that constitute the basis for the pre-feasibility study. You'll see that there isn't just one discrete area that carries the gold. The gold is carried in a relatively broad area of shattered rock within which contain sheets of mineralization. The pit is approximately 275 meters long, and at its deepest point in here, about 225 meters. So as they say, it ain't just a small hole. This is what's been done in terms of drilling to date within the pit area. The black is a summary of all the holes previously drilled by this company and others in what now constitutes the open pit. Simply put, this area has been extensively and well drilled. Again, not something you find with a junior. When a junior announces a drilling program of 3,000 feet, everybody does the kumbaya dance and thinks, wow, the junior's on its way. To us, 3,000 feet of drilling is nothing. We don't do that anymore, as you'll see later. The blue is drilling that was called for in the pre-feasibility study to convert waste to ore. Why do I use the term waste? Because some of the material was not measured or indicated, but we know it's there as inferred. The pre-feasibility study standard for 43-101 requires that when the truck comes out of the pit, it doesn't go to ore left, it goes to the right waste. We have to treat that material as waste. So we have been putting on the waste dump of the pre-feasibility study, we know material that contains an inferred gold resource. What we want to do is to raise that inferred status to measured and indicated, book it, and then the ore truck can go left when we mine that area. And here's how we intend to do it. We've contracted 2 drilling companies under a new regime in Tanzania. We're the first and only company to have successfully demonstrated a professional approach in doing this, which has been lauded by the government of Tanzania, and contrary, rumors to the contrary, Tanzania is still a good place. So this is one of our drillers, core-worthy. It's an exceptionally fine machine, standards you probably won't find in many other countries. Remarkable to find it in Tanzania. This machine drills over 100 meters a day. We have a professionally managed crew On site, we have a QA, QC supervisor to ensure everything that's done can be booked to the standard of feasibility. We have sampling, including blanks, duplicate assays, 2 labs, everything that is called for before a number can be entered in our books and used in the feasibility study. So what we're doing here in the infill is drilling 29 holes. Not bad for a little junior exploration company, 29 holes for 4,463 meters. Guess what, folks? That amounts to over 14,000 feet. So here's Tanzanian royalty, that little junior, drilling a program of over 14,000 feet just to get a bit more gold. You know what? That's not what juniors do anymore. That's serious business. That's not 3,000 feet here and 2 kilometers away, another 2,000 feet. This is professional drilling with the single purpose to convert waste to reserves. Maybe I should stop here if I'm going too fast. Anybody have any concerns or questions? Or silence sometimes is good, but sometimes it's maybe not so good. Please. So far okay? Good. I see you smiling. That makes me happy. Yep.
Are the 3 proposed deep holes?
Well, we haven't done that yet.
Are they included in that 14 and the 4463?
No, this is just the infill, which I'll
Okay.
get to it. Thank you for reminding me. Here's one of the nice graphics. You'll see a few more of these. This is the pit shell rotated. Here we're looking north-south. And here we're looking east-west. All the infill holes are the little red slices in here. You'll see all the holes are within the pit shell and stop just below the pit shell. There's no deep drilling here. So Tanzanian royalty, which used to be a junior in exploring, is now drilling 14,000 feet just to upgrade its resource base, something that I don't know many juniors are even able to do in this day and age as we're coming out of a recession.
So what is that indicative of if it's not of a junior? What would it be then?
An emerging miner, a new professional standard to the company, higher confidence for the shareholders, and much more importantly, visibility in this industry. Because very few new supplies of gold are coming online. Good question. So when we were putting this program together, we discovered in our files that over the years some deep drilling done scattered on the property. We only have the paper documents of these holes. We have no samples. We have no a good record track. Of these occasionally drilled holes, some over 10 years ago or more, 20 to 25 holes have been looked at carefully. And we see a pattern within these holes that suggests something interesting. We're finding that below the pit bottom, possibly 100, 200, or 300 meters below the pit bottom, we're finding intercepts of something like 43 meters at 5 grams per ton. At 334 meters, don't forget, the pit stops at 225 meters. These numbers are not on our books in any form of reserve, resource, twinkle in our eye, or nothing. It's just a number that we carry in our database. We find 20 meters at 7 grams per ton. I like that one. It's at 360 meters. It's 140 meters or so below our pit bottom. That's more than what they run in the Olympics for the 100 meters. That's only 100. This lies another 50 meters beyond that, below the open pit. And then we have 26 meters. What does this tell us? It tells us that here and there is a potential below the open pit for wider intercepts of gold mineralization. Second thing, it tells us that we believe some of this that has been encountered at depth, the actual part of the structure that carries that may already be in our pit. We may be seeing a piece of a structure here and possibly the same structure here. We don't yet know what's lying in between in any definitive sense. It may not be a new structure, it may just be the same, but it has now gotten wider or possibly moved. We don't know the ultimate depth of our mineralization. We have some alleged holes in our books that go down way more than 400 meters. So what do we do with this? Well, as all good geologists do, and certainly good mine finders do, you make a model. If you don't have a model, you're not an explorer. This was the early model that we put together. It shows some possible open pits. It shows some structures, and it shows some potential linear continuity, not of a specific structure, but possibly of a zone that's maybe 100 meters below the open pit. So when this model was first put together, no one ventured into the deep, dark unknown of more than 100 and 125 meters below the open pit. But it said, hey, maybe this is something we should consider. We then went further and said, is there anything out there in the industry that could help us put together a plan? And we found a carrot. Big, fat, round, juicy, red carrot. This is from the annual technical report of Bulyanhulu, Tanzania's largest gold mine that carries 20 million ounces on its books. These are the structures within the gold at Bulyanhulu occurs. If you look at these carefully, they constitute an extensive zone, what I like to call a carrot. It's a simple thing. And by the way, you're now all members of the Order of the Carrot. In this little part of the carrot, 1 million ounces. In this other little part of the carrot, another 1 million ounces. So what we see here are robust, linear structures standing from below surface, often in an unbroken zone. I couldn't find a better word than carrot, so. And now, that's what we're looking for at Buckreef. When this was first put to the table, as usual, I'm told, Mr. Rath, are we really quite on the same song sheet? So I pulled out a little jack from my deck. This comes from our files. It's line 21, my favorite line in the entire project. Look what we find in line 21. Here's the surface, here's old drilling, here's an open pit. But look at what we see. In the pit, a robust, already drilled area. And then we see below the pit a continuation of its robust character and mineralization. And God, don't strike me dead, but if I step back and I say, that even looks like a carrot. Now this occurs on paper in our files. It was done some time ago. We don't know exactly to what standards. We don't know how the product was generated completely. But it does raise some interesting questions. So we went back to the good old open pit and said, now what do we do? We got this great resource. What should we do? So we're doing something else that no juniors or junior exploration companies commonly do. We're going to do a test. We're going to do a test of 3 deep holes below the pit bottom to see if we can find a carrot. To do that, we're going to bring in a third machine that's much bigger than the one I showed you, and we're going to drill diamond core. The machines we currently have do RC. They pulverize the rock, and the crushed rock is sent to the lab. Here we're going to pull pristine rock out of the ground so we can look at it, see what its structure is, its geology, every piece it tells us. We're going to do downhole geophysics, and we're going to see whether, in fact, what now looks to be a defining characteristic of bullion hulu is something that we may also find at Buck Reef. Here's the first hole we intend to drill. There's the pit bottom, and there are the 2 holes that we intend to drill. Be 400 meters below surface. 400 meters is roughly a quarter mile. Then we're going to do another test. We're going to do 3 of them. And if these tests confirm what apparently is in our files and shows on paper, then we have a decision to make about what do we do going forward. So this puts the company in an envious position. And I'm putting up some options just to show you. I want to say none of these have been discussed or reviewed in any great measure, but it shows you the threshold on which the company is sitting. The first one is we continue with the open pit after the infill drilling. We leave it at 16 years, or we shorten its life from 8 to 10. What we know empirically is the infill drilling will increase the amount from 1.1 million and make it higher because we're converting material previously in the pit as waste into ore. So the base will be more than 1.1 million. There are those of you here who can make intelligent guesses what that might or might not be. You won't get any number from me, other than I can guarantee you it'll be more than 1.1 million ounces. We can then also decide, well, this test wasn't too bad, Mr. Rath. We'll make the target on your back a little smaller, and we'll give you a little more money. So let's see if we can find some more. We might do a little more drilling at depth to see if we can actually move some of that material that we found in the test into a resource category, perhaps indicated. Why do we need to move it to indicated? Well, we can then include it in our final feasibility study. We would then have a resource of 1.1 million ounces open pitable and an additional resource below the pit, indicated. What would that do to us? We could modify the pre-feasibility study to include an open pit and a ramp that comes off the pit wall. It's not an uncommon practice in the mining industry. And this ramp, concurrently while we're mining open pit, will start to ramp down into the underground and remove some of the ore below the pit bottom and also send it to the mill. And of course, what every mine finder likes, including myself, is we may just decide to continue to extend and see how far we can drive that carrot down and how deep the mineralization goes. Or we may do all of them. So the little pre-feasibility study we have completed, plus the program we have lying ahead of us, is putting the company in an incredibly strong position to make intelligent decisions based on a focused drilling program with targets, with models that will then allow directors and the shareholders to step back and say, Why don't we do this? And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. So, Jim, do I stay here or what? Yeah, please. You had a question, Bill. Go back to your question. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah.
Is there a certain cutoff of like grams per ton that you can put into a 43-101?
No.
So if you're going down deep and you find let's just say you find a honey pot and it's huge. So you can't claim that, so let's say you have like 20 grams per ton, whatever it is, 50,
there is, yes there is. I think I know what you're getting at. The 43-101 standards requires capping of high-grade numbers under certain circumstances, not all. The circumstances under which high grade must be capped is if it's a skewed number. A skewed number means it's not log normal, but it means there is a disproportionate amount of gold in one or two holes that can affect a wider area. If that is the case, it must be capped. If not, for example, if we were to find a lighthouse of 30 grams per ton in the infill drilling, it would never be capped. It will stay because we have enough holes around it to say it doesn't disproportionately influence that package. Having said that, up to 20 grams per ton, it will always be in the model, no matter what you do. It's another part you may have to cap, and that is to prevent juniors from drilling one glory hole and say they got 2 million ounces, because the computer suddenly found it all around them as far as the eye can see.
But you would be able to, at certain depths, as you're saying, let's say that it is a clone of Bullion Hulu, it's in a perfect world, you'd be able to reasonably see by where you're going down and degrade in the depth, that that's...
Yep. Well, the only way we drill, even the infill drill, before the drill goes underground, we have a meter by meter log, conceptual log, with expected intercepts, change, structure, and target area. As the drill goes down, periodically it stops, and we put what's called a GPS monitor down the hole to say where are we in terms of the projected drill line next to the actual. And this way we intend to guide the drill to as close as we can get to the actual target area. That way we will then have confidence that what some piece of paper says is here is actually there.
How big is the drill bit?
We start out quite large. By the time we get down to the deeper part, it'll be HQ. So it's a telescopic, and in the first I'm going the wrong way. In the first instance, most likely, we're not too interested in a lot of this stuff. If this hole goes through the pit, we're going to do nothing in here, because we've already done it. We know the geology, but we may start being more serious once we get in here. So it's a judgment call. We don't want to waste our time logging rocks that we already know all about from surface for the first 300 meters. It's a waste of money and time.
The Bullion Hulu example, what are the dimensions of that mine versus this one?
I believe it's our closest neighbor. It's about 20 kilometers away.
So physically, what we have here is similar to the size of that carrot?
We don't know. All I'm saying is when you look for what could be something that defines how mineralization occurs at depths, the only one that's closest to us that looks like something we might have is Bullion Hulu. Am I saying we have Bullion Hulu? Of course I'm not. Am I saying could we have structures that are similar to it? We're going to do a test.
So are they mining similarly the way
Oh, they've been mining for 10 years. Jim helped start the mine.
Are they doing open pit? And this-
No, they've completely underground.
How efficient is that compared to open pit?
It depends on two factors. One is the quality of the rock. If the quality of the rock you're mining underground is weak and requires extensive supports, both metallic and structural and geotechnical, it's very expensive. You have to pre-develop, you have to keep the roof up from falling down on miners and all these things. If you have a competent roof, it's much cheaper. One of the things that we will be doing, if our test is successful with the core that we have, it will be subjected to a professional lab that specializes in geotechnical and core strength analysis to tell us how competent the roof rocks are at Buck Reef. That will be one of the first tests that will tell us the nature of possible underground mining. At this point, I cannot give you an answer. We know some of this gold is in fractured material. Fractured material historically is not kind to miners, but these are things that we will only be able to find out once we can lay our hands on the actual core. The second part of your question is high grade. While we have intercepts here of possibly 20, 30, 40 meters at a weighted average grade, the defining characteristic at Buck Reef and Bulyanhulu is within these broad zones are narrower zones of exceptionally high grade. It is not one uniform demineralized package. Here or there, you get what I call lightning. You might have 4 meters at 15 grams, 18 grams, 20 grams. And ultimately, that carries you underground. It's not the 30 meters of average. It's getting those nice high grades as you go in there that will really help. And again, that requires quite a bit more work. You'll see in the Bulyanhulu model, although this is a pink carrot, the actually mineralized areas are actually narrower and defined in blue. By the way, this is my graphic. This was put together by American Barrick. They're currently mining around here.
And what depth is that?
It's about 500 meters.
So we're taking core samples. You indicated there was some data that just was data only. Did you have any core samples?
Nope, nothing.
So
We just have a cartoon in our files. That's what we have.
So the core samples that we're taking, I guess part of that goes to the lab independently.
Yep.
And then we're going to save some of that.
You split it in half.
Where does that get warehoused?
We have a core storage facility. We have to. Under 43101 standards, you cannot produce a feasibility study without a certified 43101 storage facility that is open to public inspection.
And how long are we required to keep these samples?
Probably 10 years.
Minimum of 10 years.
Welcome to the big leagues. This ain't junior companies talking no more.
So the previous core samples that we did under this company,
We don't have much. We don't have much. Most of it is pulverized rocks and sacks. And we store those as well.
so even the RC stuff.
We have to. Yes?
Is there any main fault line or a real significant geological structure that separates Bulyanhulu from Buck Reef?
There are many. In a broad context, Bulyanhulu and Buck Reef could lie in northern Ontario. The area is the second largest known area of volcanic greenstone belt. The largest is in Canada. All the rocks are over 1 billion years in age. And structures, folding and faulting, are the norm. But as we've seen, for example, in the Abitibi Belt, elsewhere, sometimes gold mines occur like little pearls on the string. They run on what's called trends. These things are not always well defined or understood. We don't know that much about Tanzania in that regard. So I can't give you a definitive answer, but are they on structures? Yes. No doubt about it. Are they in greenstone belts? Yes. One difference between Buck Reef and Bullion Hulu is we have more greenstone around us than basalt. At Bullion Hulu, they have less greenstone and more basalt and magma. But I leave those to PhD theses to study and comment on. I'm looking for a mine. Go ahead.
How long is the drill program going to take to prove or disprove the deep gold?
Well, it depends on when we get the machine. And unlike the infill drilling are paid to drill fast because we want to get the infill drilling done. This one will be paid to go slow. Nobody wants to break any speed records on these 3 test holes. We want to make sure they're properly sited, properly drilled, regularly inspected and monitored. So I can't give you an estimate. We have finalized a contract with the company in terms of the broad parameters. We then will have to sit down with them. They're not found, they're developed. Yes, go ahead.
To pin down what his original question.
Yes.
How soon before you think you'll have a completion of the 3D holes?
Paper and pencil. Month and a half. We're drilling 1,656 meters in 3 holes. The rate at which we drill them is yet to be determined. And although these machines are big, capable of going quite fast, for this test, they're going to be going very, very slowly. Because if you do a test badly and you base your decision based on a bad test, it's not only stupid, but you've wasted a lot of money. So in that particular case, I don't think speed is of the essence. And we may need more. Who knows? After 3 holes, we may say, okay, we've got enough, but we need to get more. There are many, many, parameters. But yes, you will be hearing from us with results from the deeper drilling, I would say within a month or month. During that month or month and a half. The first 100 meters, you'll get no results from us anyway, because we're just drilling through sterile rock. It takes a while, to drill a hole a quarter of a mile down. Yes?
Can you comment whether with previous drilling you found any mineralization other than gold?
Yes, we have found some. We found 2 interesting additional mineralization at Bullion Hulu. When you get to the bottom of the carrots, anyway, what we're finding at Bullion Hulu is copper. So near the bottom of the Bullion Hulu ore zone, copper grades have risen. In fact, Bullion Hulu no longer produces doré. They produce a copper concentrate, low-grade copper concentrate with gold, and a gold concentrate with copper. And the reason for that is that some people believe that if you get closer to the source of the magma from which the gold came, you're likely to find copper. Copper doesn't migrate very far, whereas gold has a tendency and can migrate further away from the heat source. Thank you. And we are finding a little bit of copper in some of those deeper holes I've shown you, Bill. But again, we have nothing yet that says there is a pattern here or a trend. But one of the things we will be looking for in the test is copper. And the second one we're finding is molybdenum. You'll see here or there areas that appear to have anomalous molybdenum. And right now we're going to be determining to see if we can come up with what is the origin of the molybdenum. But again, both are still even more of a twinkle in our eye, but yes, we do find them. And what we do, we run assays for gold only, and then periodically we run whole rock assays for the whole suite of elements: copper, gold, silver, lithium, rare earths, everything, just to see if anything pops up, and if it does, we'll go back.
So is that part, I know it's very premature, but assuming you find those and it's worth going after them, does that become part of the strategic plan for the company, or do you bring somebody else in to take the byproducts, or how do you do that?
You have to do, first of all, and you have to gather enough core to do what's called standard metallurgical test work. Shipped to a laboratory, it's ground, see if you can float it, turn it into concentrate. If it's able to do it, turn it into concentrate, you then have to incorporate that into your feasibility study. But the ability to produce and sell high-grade gold concentrates in the world is very easy. Most smelters regard gold-bearing concentrates as an incredible premium. And the reason for it is their policy of deducting what they keep in their pocket. You have to pay for their costs, but then they also keep some metal in their pocket. And those deductions on high-grade copper gold concentrates are unbelievable. So smelters like them.
It sounds like the confidence still is high in feasibility of an open pit for 16 years. It sounds like the confidence is growing for a second stage, whether it's a ramp or underground production. Is that the general scope?
Almost. We have high confidence in the existing open pit. We will end up having even higher confidence after we finish the infill drill program, because the existing open pit will then be raised to a higher standard. That's probably where we have the highest confidence. So if hell freezes over and Woody Raz is a madman, you have a better feasibility study than you do pre-feasibility of a nice open pit. As Jim likes to call it, that's my bank. The rest is an exciting venture that I think we need to do. As a responsible mining company, we need to see what is there, can we put our arms around it, what do we know about it in terms of making decisions as we go forward. Not to do that, in my opinion, is irresponsible. And if we had a board and we told you about these things or never mentioned them to you, we would not be conducting ourselves in a professional manner.
So what is
That was a nice presentation, and I appreciate
What?
seeing that. That was a nice presentation, and I appreciate seeing that. That helps me get a better visual of what has been happening. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for your kind words. I hope I wasn't being in any way offensive. Sorry?
Oh, other than the amount of drill holes, what distinguishes a pre-feasibility study from a feasibility study?
You have to do everything to plus or minus 10%. So all costs have to be based on at least 3 vendor quotes, documented in your files, and you have to demonstrate why you picked vendor A over vendor B or vendor C. Reserves can only be measured or indicated. And your metallurgical test work on which recoveries and estimates are done have to be raised to a higher standard. There has to be duplication and independent verification of the results you're doing metallurgically.